Hello again, everyone. This is Noah, and we are going to look at whether a table of values with x and y, our inputs and outputs, is a function. We're going to look at this a couple of different ways. We're going to dig a little bit more deeper than we did in the last video where we talked about a set of points being a function or not. We're going to kind of try and look at it both ways, like is x a function of y, or is y a function of x in either direction? Or we can kind of play with the idea of which is the input and which is the output. And if we look at it in the opposite direction, are we going to get a function that maybe we didn't originally, or vice versa? Excuse me. So let's take a look here. We have this example where we've got a table, and it says that the following table completely determines a relationship between x and y. So we can know that there's no other inputs or outputs to this. This is supposed to be centered. So let's take a look at the table. We have x in the top row. The x values are 2, 4, 6, 8, and -2. The y values are in the second row. They are 4, -13, 13, 6, and -11. From this, we see that the x value of 2 outputs a y value. So if we think of x as the inputs, then if x is 2, the output, the y value is 4. If x is 4, the y value, the output is -13. If x is 6, the corresponding y value is +13. If x is 8, the corresponding y value is 6. And if x is -2, the corresponding y value is -11. So we want to say, is y a function of x? Or the wording here is determine whether y is a function of x. So we're saying when we use this wording, and this is kind of the important thing to get out of this, is that the way this is read, is y a function of x, or determine whether y is a function of x, is implying that with this wording, we mean if x is the input and y is the output, is that a function? And the reason we use this wording is really due to the notation y of x, right? Is y a function of x? If I write y of x, where I'm thinking of x as the inputs and y as the outputs, does that constitute a function? So for the inputs 2, 4, 6, 8, and -2, we see that if x is the inputs, then 2 only outputs 4, 4 only outputs -13, 6 only outputs 13, 8 only outputs 6, and -2 only outputs -11. It keeps uncentering. It's bugging me. I'm working in OneNote, and it just fights the formatting sometimes. It's really annoying. When does it switch? This is not important to the conversation. I'm sorry. So for this, we can say, okay, if we think of x as the inputs and y as the outputs, yes, y is a function of x. Each x only outputs a single y value. All right, cool. So if we think of x as the inputs and y as the outputs, then we can talk about the domain and the range, where the domain is going to be the set of all the x values. The domain is going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, and -2. And the range is going to be the set of all the y values, 4, -13, 13, 6, and -11. Cool. Now part C asks us to think of it in the opposite way. It says, if we think of y as the input and x as the output, what then is the domain and range? So if we think of y as the input, then the domain is going to be all the y values. 4, negative 13, 13, 6, and negative 11. I know this is a little backwards from how we're used to thinking of it, but it's perfectly okay to think of it this way. It's just thinking, upside down or inside out, backwards. The range then would be the set of outputs, but now we're thinking of x as the output. So that would be the x values, 2, 4, 6, 8, and negative 2. So if we think in this way for part D, with y as the input and x as the output, can we say, is x a function of y? Can we say x of y, and is that a function? Is x of y a function? So if I look at the y values, 4 as a y value would only output 2. Negative 13 as a y value would only output 4. Positive 13 as a y value would only output the x value of 6. The y value of 6 would only output the x value of 8. And the y value of negative 11 would only output the x value of negative 2. So yes, x is a function of y. Each y value only corresponds to a single x value, right? Only would output a single x value. And you see, it undid the centering again, and I missed when it did it. I don't know what I clicked on or how. Okay, that's it for this video. I will figure that out when I'm not being recorded. Go ahead and give the Now You Try problem a shot, and then we'll walk through that answer in the next video. Thanks again. See you in a minute.